Good morning, Devils fans. It is 7:30 in the morning on July 3rd, meaning the second day of free agency has come and gone with no additional moves made by our New Jersey Devils. However, I think it's pretty apparent that Fitzy is still cooking out there, given the fact he still has not had his media availability and the known quantity of wanting to fill in another winger spot. So I wanted to take today's episode to kind of discuss who was still out there, who has come and gone, and give my thoughts and feelings about what we might expect in the next coming days. However, before I get into that, I did want to touch base once again on our defense because I'm still seeing and hearing a bit of chatter about how he might be looking to fill in another spot, not wanting to go into the season with two rookies. I could not really disagree more. I think we're completely done on defense. We currently have six guys under contract with the seventh on the way once Ball gets signed, probably for about a mil, give or take. Factor that in with Nemec, going to be fighting for a spot, and that brings us to eight defensemen if Nemec forces his way onto the roster, likely sending one of Smith or Miller down unless they really want to carry eight, which is possible, but I think they'll give another young guy, Holtz, some time at the beginning of the season, like they did last year, to earn his spot. But even with those three guys coming into the roster, we would still have one roster spot available for this additional winger to be brought in. If Ball gets that about a million, Holtz and Nemec still on their ELCs, it leaves us with about a 2.5 million in space, give or take. So not too much to spend, but definitely enough to fill in that kind of low range middle to bottom six winger role. So first, who just came off the market? Well, big name that just went last night was Bertuzzi to the Leafs. 1 year, 5.5 million. Clearly over that 2.5 we would have to spend. If you want to factor in, we maybe send a couple guys out to give us 5.5 to play with. I still would not have signed that contract. Would I have liked Bertuzzi? Yes. On a short-term deal, absolutely. 1 year would have been perfect. Not at 5.5 million. That would have had to come down quite significantly. And if what I heard is correct, that the Leafs offered way more on that 1 year than any other team was offering on a year-to-year basis, I can see why he went there and we were not the ones to land him. The other guy that just went off, also going to the Leafs, was Domi. Now, I did hear we were interested and were pursuing Domi, and at 1 year, 3 million, I could see us spending that, especially filling in that bottom six, given what he brings to the table. Absolute black hole defensively, but he has some offense and grit to his game. But I just don't see a world where we were beating out the Leafs with someone having the last name of Domi. Also, Domi on a devil sweater definitely would have rubbed some people the wrong way. I would have gotten over it pretty quickly, given what the entertainment he would have brought to the ice, but we weren't beating out the Leafs on a Domi. So he took a bit of a discount to go there, I think, at only 3 mil, but he is likely to make that up with endorsements in Toronto. One name I definitely would have liked on the contract he was given was Evan Rodriguez with a 4x3, but I'm thinking maybe the term is what kept Fitz away there. Or we just really weren't a landing spot he was quite interested in, given the fact he would be very unlikely to play himself into a higher role. So best of luck to him. I think that was a pretty great ad. The only other big name out there that has been signed that I've seen Devils fans were possibly interested in was Blake Wheeler. We could go to a litany of reasons why we shouldn't have pursued him. I'm not one to overblow locker room issues. His seem to be pretty well established, but Nico, Jack, Dougie, Palat, Toffoli got a lot of big voices in this room, and I think that probably could have been squashed here. Throw him in the bottom six. He definitely could play himself into a middle six role, but we weren't going to get him at 800,000. He's going to go to the big market, the big team in the Rangers. He's going to play at MSG, which is perfect for him, given the fact that it does stand for more slow geriatrics. So he found himself a nice home there. Can't wait for Jack to blow by him and score a million goals, as is just going to happen this year. So who is still out there? Well, one big name that we all know and love, Tomas Tatar. I'm surprised the bubble team hasn't picked him up yet. I don't know if he's going to come back here. Usually, once a guy is told you're not being re signed and you go test free agency, it's a bit of a sourness there. Pride maybe gets in the way. But if he was interested, I would absolutely take him back on a 1 year deal, taking a probably significant pay cut compared to what we were paying him last year. Play him in that middle six if he wants. We could even put him on the fourth line with Mikey and Nader. And I think he could absolutely thrive there, maybe even in the playoffs in that type of role. Does he want to take that type of discount to come back? We know his vibes with the team were amazing. He wouldn't have to worry about moving. Uh, Already established here, and maybe they find a way to make it work out with the money we have available. But again, you definitely have to take a bit of a pay cut, and there's got to be some bubble team out there willing to pay him a decent amount just to get them over that hump. Another name that I've seen throw around is Tarasenko. I think he is just going to cost too much to come here. He probably wants at least a little bit of term. Unlikely to want to take a super short term, super cheap deal. He's an established quantity, so he has nothing really to prove. Teams are going to know what they're going to get from him, and he is not really going to have the opportunity to showcase himself on a short-term deal here like Bertuzzi is doing in Toronto because our top six is pretty cluttered. Though he possibly could force his way in there, I just don't see the money happening. The other name tied to Tarasenko obviously would be Patrick Kane, and that's just, it's not happening. Too slow. He will not thrive here. He would bring down our system, and I just don't see him coming here anyway. A couple of maybe under the radar names, for me at least. Josh Bailey could maybe be an interesting option. He's bought out, so he is making some money. Kind of gives him that Wheeler type option to come in on an absolute minimum deal. But I think he'd really be a fourth liner at best, unless he has a bit of a resurgence and forces himself into a third line role, which could be quite interesting with Palat, Hall, and Bailey on the third line. But I just don't see management really going for that, given the fact that he probably is likely to block someone like Foote making it onto the roster. So I do think if and when we find this middle bottom six winger that Tom is after, it's going to be more of a sure thing. If it's any sort of toss up or gamble, we're going to leave it to our young kids coming up from Utica to force their way onto the team, or just leave that hole, give ourselves some cap flexibility come trade deadline to make a bigger move on someone that might have some retention to fill in that gap for us. A couple other names would be Pularvi, fourth liner at best here. He's been thrown around. Again, why take a risk on someone like him when we have someone like Foote coming up? I just don't see it happening. And I just saw his name out there. Always a sap for former Devils coming back. But again, when you're the one who moves them out, it's usually a bit of a sour taste. But that is Andreas Johnson, Mango. I think that ship has sailed. I just don't see him coming here on that bottom six role. And the other big name that is still being floated is Alex DeBrincat. We don't have the money. He's not coming here. We're not putting the assets for it. We made our big moves with Meyer and Toffoli. We have no need for him. And given the UFA market that's still out there for wingers, I think maybe there's going to be another shrewd move by Tom to make a trade, similar to how he brought in Colin Miller. When we were all thinking maybe there was a defenseman he was going to sign, he instead moved out a late pick, brought in a guy on a short-term, nice, low AAV deal. I can see the same thing happening for this winger spot, even if it's in that similar vein of someone needing to force their way onto the team, so people like Holtz and Foote aren't blocked out, because those ELCs become more and more valuable as we move along. And like I said, if we leave ourselves a bit of cap room to play with, there is always moves in season that can be made, or trade deadline, retention type deals where you're bringing in a bigger, more surefire name at a good value when we know exactly what we're working with. And to me, those were my obvious reactions of who is out there in the winger spot. I do also think Tom is still sniffing around on a goalie. If maybe retention was used, or unfortunately if VTech had to be moved out, Hellebuck's money could definitely still work here this year and going forward. But the free agent market for goalies is pretty barren. I don't see them bringing any of those current free agents out there unless they really, really want Schmid to start down in Utica given Dawes is out and just use it as a stopgap till Dawes returns, bring Schmidt up, and waive whoever it is we do bring in. So I think a trade is probably likely. Hellebuck, one of the Boston goalies, maybe, but they definitely moved out a lot of cap. They probably can keep both of their guys. So what was a bloated goalie market quickly dried up. And if we're left with Vitek and Schmid, I'm comfortable with that. They had an amazing regular season, and if Vitek continues to struggles in the playoff, that is what Schmid is here for, especially a full year with the team, developing further. I'm comfortable. So that's really it for today. Tomorrow we'll see what today brings, and maybe we get a bit more clarification around these winger and goalie markets for us. So I will see you guys all tomorrow in the morning again. Hope you have a great rest of your day.